If we think that the world is what we experience it as, that is the totality of the world, then we are blind. The truth is that the world we perceive and the world that we experience as an individual does not exist beyond ourselves, although our experience does relate to an actual reality which we all share. The mistake of some New Age thinking is to imagine that we create reality in its deepest sense, that we create all reality. But in truth, we do not, for there is a structure that exists apart from and beyond ourselves. Yet, despite this deeper structure, as human beings and as awakening souls, what we experience as the world only exists within ourselves in the exact way that we experience it. In other words, it's like the story of the blind man and the elephant, whereas each man, being blind, thinks that what he touches is the totality of the entire thing, whatever that might be. So one touches the tail and thinks it's a rope, one the leg and thinks it's a tree, another the trunk and thinks that it's a snake. Being blind, they cannot see the entire structure, the underlying structure beyond each of their individual experiences. And although what they are experiencing is real, it is also very uniquely individual. And this is why we must be humble in our perception of others and of the world and reality as a whole. Some scientists, mind scientists and philosophers, have spoken of the idea of what is called qualia, a quality to each thing that cannot be described or fully comprehended simply through its component parts, simply through factual analysis. It's sort of like a deep feeling and color unique to that thing's inner reality. It's the same if I know someone well, and I think, because I understand their thought processes, I understand their worldview, that I have a full grasp of who they are and what they experience. But this would be incorrect, because so much of our experience has to do with what it feels like to believe these things for us, what it feels like to experience what we are experiencing. And even though I might know someone well, even though I might understand fully what they think, even though I might understand their worldview, that does not mean that I comprehend what it feels like to be them, until I get to know them in such a deep and intimate way as a friend or partner that I can intuit the feeling behind those beliefs. And so even the most ignorant person, even the person that's completely trapped in a ego-centered worldview, they might not understand their own depths, but the depths are there. And the feeling of their life is something that I cannot know in fullness. I have to accept that. I have to accept that all of life is in some way beyond me, beyond who I am and beyond what experience. And this is good. Even though the ego does not want it, the soul is completely content with this and even desires it, that infinity should be so far beyond each one of us, and that the totality of experience and feeling should be infinite in its extent, and that we should never be able to fully comprehend it, so that there's always something to grow into as we expand in consciousness and awakening. That is what the soul longs for. The ego is afraid, so the ego wants to limit all beings and the world itself to its own limits. It wants to limit reality to its limits, perception to its perceptions, and feeling to what it feels. But the soul doesn't want that. I don't want that. Why would I want that? Why would I want the entire world to be limited to my own limits and my perceptions? That would be a terrible thing. That would not be a good thing to me. Because I want doors of experience, doors of other beings, human beings or souls, that I can enter into in true relationship, into infinity. It makes the world so much bigger. It makes reality so much bigger to understand humbly that there are feelings and experiences that I cannot know, that I can never know in this human form, in this human level of consciousness, no matter how awakened I become as a human being. The totality of human experience is beyond me, and that's good. When I accept it from my spirit, and I'm not clinging to control as an ego, and I sit back and I realize how vast the world of experience and feeling is, it's good, it's beautiful, it's what I want. To know that others are beyond me, that they are queens and kings of their own reality, that they are little creative gods, just as I am a little creative god, and they, although there is that underlying structure, they also create reality. They also create through their feeling, through their vision, reality, and it may be unconsciously. But still, it's there, the feeling is there, even in the more ignorant points of view and worldviews. Even in the ones we might consider bigoted. There's always some dream there. There's always something within that. And I've spoken about this a lot, the fact that everything has a seed of life within it. Everything has love within it. And that's the truth of every worldview, in which everyone is the center of a feeling, a creative reality of a self that feels. We are all queens and kings and gods of a reality, of a incredibly unique point of viewing outward into infinity and in relationship to that which is other than ourselves, creating a reality based upon that feeling, that unique essential color that is us. This is true of everyone and of every reality. You could be a gang leader, you could be a dictator, you could be a monk or a priest, or a CEO, or a hobo, a killer. You could be many things. But each of us has an experience and a feeling and a color, and there is life in that. And of course it becomes twisted in the ignorance of ego, and we start pursuing life where life is not to be found. We go down dead-end paths. We go down these dead-end paths thinking that we can find life in these purely linear and shallow visions of what we want. But as I say, there's a deep and there's a shallow way to look at everything, and when we look at things in a shallow way, we pursue things in a shallow way. And when we look at things in a deep way, we find a totality of experience that is far more fulfilling. And as I often say, it's not that we turn away from the shallow thing because of the negative, because we feel fear or guilt or shame. We turn away because we realize that the only reason these things might be considered wrong is that they are not enough. That there's something so much more to be had when we open ourselves to the totality of what we can be. The fulfillment of the fullness of our experience. That's why a focus on purely linear pleasures and powers is not right, or not ultimately enough, because there's so much more to be had. Knowing this, we will each from the center of our feeling, our being, moving into the world that we perceive and knowing it's not the totality of the world, but it's an aspect of it, and that we can create from this center of experience, then we will each move in the direction of seeking to broaden ourself and our experience, knowing that experience is unique to us and yet relates to a deep foundational geometry of existence and relationship which we all share. And knowing these two things, we will expand ourself, our color, our creative feeling into reality through relationship. We will not pretend like our view of reality is the totality of reality, and our view of the world is the totality of the world. Our view of others, the totality of others. We will not pretend this. We will understand that our view, our experience is our own, and yet it relates to an underlying geometry, an underlying existence, an essential reality which we all have in common. And knowing this again, we will relate to others and begin a creative process of real relationship in which we create together upon this essential structure of existence, of relationship, of life, of God, of love, however you might want to call that. And so it's important to realize that our experience is not all experience, and yet there is something in common. And we can understand others if we broaden ourselves to truly relate. And also to understand that, like ourselves, all others are also kings and queens and little gods of a reality that's real. It may be, aspects of it may be completely unique and individual to them, yet it's still real. And learning to experience that in relationship and have them experience us in authentic relationship is the path to life. It's the path to infinity, the path to eternity. True relationship from an authentic acceptance and knowing of our color, our desire to be a king or a queen or a god. And also knowing the equality of the other, which I say so often, the equality of the other. That the other is equal, no matter if its experience is less conscious, no matter if its experience is even negative or even destructive. Even as we seek relationship and healing and awakening, we realize that there is real color in everything, and that in changing things toward life, which is the goal of the soul, changing things toward life in true awakening and relationship, we also understand the seed and the dream of life within all things. We respect the vastness of the world, of others, of infinity, and all that is beyond us, and we like it. We like that there is so much beyond ourselves, because that's infinite life. If it wasn't so, it would be a form of hell. And often the visions of heaven that certain religions put forth seem, to me at least, to be visions of a hellish reality in which everything is limited. Freedom is limited. What God can be is limited. What we can be is limited. Feeling is limited. Expression is limited. Intimacy is limited. Relationship. There's all this limitation upon what reality can be in these visions of what is supposed to be the ultimate heavenly freedom and life. But that's because the ego is seeking to limit because it's afraid. It's seeking to limit because with limitation, control becomes possible. The soul doesn't want that. The soul doesn't want control. It wants consciousness and relationship and life.